At her sister's wedding, my best friend caught the bouquet. Then walked straight to my table and changed everything. The bouquet was still spinning through the air when I felt my whole world tilt with it. I watched it arc over the heads of laughing bridesmaids, watched a dozen hands reach up, and then watched it fall, almost impossibly, into the arms of the one person I never expected to catch anything meant for me. My best friend, Elena, stood there holding those white roses like she didn't know what to do with them, and for one long, breathless second, the entire reception seemed to freeze. Then she looked past the crowd, past her own sister's tears of joy, straight across the room at me, and she started walking. Not toward her family. Not toward the photographer waving her over for pictures. Toward my table. And what she did when she got there would change the rest of my life. If a story about second chances and the kind of love that hides in plain sight for years moves something in you, take a moment right now to like this video, drop a comment telling me where you're watching from, share it with someone who still believes people can surprise you, and subscribe to the channel so you never miss a story like this one. Now let's go back to where it all began. My name is Daniel, and 3 years before that wedding, I was the kind of man who had convinced himself he was fine being alone. I had a small apartment above a bakery, a job repairing vintage furniture that paid just enough to get by, and a heart I kept sealed shut after a divorce that left me questioning whether I was capable of being loved at all. My ex-wife had left with words that still echoed in quiet moments, telling me I was too guarded, too careful, too afraid to let anyone close enough to hurt me. She wasn't wrong. After she left, I built walls so high that even the people who cared about me struggled to find a way in. Elena was the exception. We had known each other since university, back when she used to bring me coffee during exam week and I used to fix her broken bicycle without being asked. Somewhere along the way, in the ordinary rhythm of phone calls and shared dinners and late-night conversations about nothing and everything, she became the one constant in my life. She was there after the divorce, sitting on my kitchen floor at 2 a.m. while I tried to explain why I felt like a failure. She never once told me I was broken. She just stayed. For years, she just stayed, through my worst nights and my quietest victories, through job losses and small triumphs, through every version of myself I tried on and discarded. And through all of it, I told myself what we had was friendship, because friendship was safe, and safe was the only thing I trusted myself to survive. What I didn't let myself see, or maybe refused to see, was the way her eyes lingered a little too long when I laughed at something she said. The way she remembered details about my life that even I forgot, my mother's birthday, the anniversary of my father's passing, the exact way I liked my tea when I was anxious. I told myself that was just Elena being Elena, thoughtful to a fault, generous with everyone she loved. I never once let myself imagine that maybe, just maybe, she loved me in a way that went far beyond friendship, because admitting that would have meant admitting I might feel the same way, and I wasn't ready to survive losing her the way I had lost everyone else. Then came the year everything nearly fell apart. Elena started dating someone, a man named Victor who worked in finance and drove a car nicer than anything I'd ever touched. He was polite when we met, shook my hand firmly, smiled the practiced smile of someone used to being liked. But something in his eyes made me uneasy, a coldness beneath the charm that I couldn't quite name. I told myself it wasn't my business. I told myself Elena was a grown woman capable of choosing her own path, and that my discomfort was nothing more than the selfish ache of a man realizing too late what he might lose. So I said nothing. I smiled through dinners where Victor talked over her, clapped politely when he made jokes at her expense disguised as affection, and told myself that swallowing my concerns was the price of being a good friend. 6 months into their relationship, Elena showed up at my apartment at midnight, mascara streaked down her face, her hands trembling as she tried to explain what had happened. Victor had humiliated her in front of his colleagues at a dinner party, mocking her career choices, calling her sensitive when she tried to defend herself, and then blaming her for making a scene when she finally walked out. She sat on my couch that night, smaller than I had ever seen her, and asked me the question that broke something open in my chest. She asked me why she kept choosing people who made her feel like she wasn't enough, when all she had ever wanted was to feel like someone's first choice instead of a convenient one. I didn't have an answer for her that night, not one I was brave enough to say out loud. Because the truth sitting right there in my throat was that she already was someone's first choice. She had been mine for years. I was just too afraid to say it. So instead, I made her tea the way she liked it, sat with her until the sun came up, and let her fall asleep on my shoulder while I stayed awake, wrestling with the cowardice that had cost me the courage to tell her the truth. The months after that were quieter between us, not because we grew apart, but because something had shifted and neither of us knew how to name it. Elena started rebuilding herself, taking a pottery class she'd always wanted to try, traveling alone for the first time, learning to trust her own judgment again. I watched her become someone even more luminous than before, someone who no longer shrank herself to fit into spaces that were never meant for her. And with every small victory she shared with me, every proud smile over a finished piece of pottery or a solo trip she'd survived, I fell deeper into a truth I could no longer outrun. I loved her. Not as a friend. Not as the safe, careful version of love I had rationed out my whole life. I loved her the way you love something you're terrified to lose, which is why, coward that I was, I still said nothing. Then her sister's wedding arrived, and with it, the day that would strip away every excuse I had left. I remember watching Elena that afternoon, radiant in pale blue, laughing with relatives, dancing with her nephews, glowing with a kind of joy that had nothing to do with anyone but herself. And I remember thinking, with sudden and terrifying clarity, that I had spent years standing at the edge of her life, calling it friendship, when what I actually wanted was to stand in the center of it. When the bride tossed her bouquet and it landed, almost too perfectly, in Elena's arms, the whole room erupted in laughter and teasing, calling out that she was next. But Elena didn't laugh along. She went still, bouquet pressed against her chest, and then her eyes found mine across the crowded room, and something passed between us that no words could have carried. She walked toward my table with the flowers still in her hands, ignoring the calls from her family, ignoring the photographer, ignoring everyone but me. When she reached me, she didn't sit down. She stood there, slightly breathless, and told me that she was tired of pretending she didn't know what she wanted, tired of watching me be careful with everyone including myself, tired of waiting for a moment brave enough to hold the truth. She told me she loved me, had loved me for longer than she could measure, and that if I didn't feel the same way, she needed to hear it now, because she couldn't keep loving someone in silence for one more year. I stood up so fast I nearly knocked over my chair. I took the bouquet from her hands, set it down on the table behind me, and in front of nearly 200 wedding guests who had no idea they were about to witness anything more than a bridal tradition, I told Elena the truth I had been burying for years. I told her she had never been my safe choice. She had been my only choice, and I had simply been too afraid to admit it. I told her that every wall I had built after my divorce had crumbled slowly, quietly, every single time she showed up for me without asking anything in return. And then, because there are moments in life when courage finally outweighs fear, I kissed her, right there in the middle of her sister's wedding reception, while strangers cheered and her family cried, and somewhere in the background, the DJ started playing a slow song neither of us had chosen but that felt written just for that moment. If this story touched something in you, if it reminded you that the right love is often standing closer than you think, please take a moment to like this video and share it with someone who needs a little hope today. Your support means more than you know and helps this channel keep bringing you stories like this one. Before I tell you how it ends, I want to ask you something. If you have ever loved someone quietly, for longer than you were brave enough to admit, comment the word brave below, so I know how many of you understand exactly what this story means. Elena and I have been together for 2 years now. We got married last spring in a small ceremony surrounded by the same people who witnessed that moment at her sister's wedding, the moment that changed everything. Sometimes the person meant to catch you has been standing beside you all along, waiting only for you to finally, fully, see them.